I have a very special guest, and we're going to know him as Zach K., who is also a Mets fan.
Let's go.
But not an Eagles fan, so
Negative.
almost the exact same, but Mets, Giants, Mets, Eagles. So if you ever want to change, it's KH. I'm H, Zach K. So let's start off with some baseball talk because obviously you're wearing your Francisco Lindor jersey. So I got to ask with a very important question. I was hoping the Mets would go into a win streak going into the All-Star break. Obviously, that's not possible because they got one game left and they just lost last night. But winning 6 out of the last 7, is this a lost season? Can they turn it around? The players keep thinking that when we are on a hot streak, do not join this team again because we are ready to roll. It's just a matter of when. And I'm not seeing it. What do you think?
So this is kind of the big thing is right now, we hadn't won a single series in the month of June. We didn't win a single series in the month of June. But yet coming into July, starting off with such a hot streak, even with that game that was a loss, the bats, they couldn't put it together. But Alvarez, the guy who's been heating up recently, was still able to keep his bat going, heading a solo home run in his 17th home run in 60 games. So, I mean, it's the offense is there, and if they're able to keep building on it, they have a chance to clinch a wild card spot. I don't think you're going to catch the Atlanta Braves. I think that's a pipe dream. You're not going to get that. But if you can go and chase that wild card slot, it's not out of the question, but you really have to go on a really good run. It's going to have to be better than their 2019 run that they tried to do to kind of skim into the playoffs.
Another question I would pose for you. If there wasn't a kid named Ellie De La Cruz, how much attention and love would Francisco Alvarez be getting right now? Because part of that turnaround, I feel, is like that infectious energy that Alvarez has brought into the Mets' whole entire team. It feels like they're re-energized. So I would pair it partly with the energy of the young gun in Alvarez, and then Pete Alonso. We all thought he was going to be out like 2, 3, 4 weeks with that wrist injury, but he's come back after 11 days off, and I feel like that leadership showing, hey, I'm going to take accountability. I know I'm injured, but you guys need a leader. We're struggling right now. I got to get back for my team. Those two mixed together, I think, has been part of the turnaround that you've seen in July, because if you look at their July numbers, it's completely different than their June numbers.
Absolutely. And you could tell once Alonso got hit and he went down, he was out for a while. The team went into a deep slump. There was no power in the lineup. They were getting guys on base, but no one was getting driven home. And that's always been Alonso's thing. Yes, it's always the hitting the home runs thing. He's always a big power guy, but his number one stat always is RBIs. He tied Aaron Judge in RBIs last year, and Aaron Judge hit 62 home runs. So when he's not in the lineup, you already know your RBI numbers are going down. Lindor's kind of taken on that role. He's now leading the MLB shortstops in RBIs this year. And, maybe that should have qualified him for an all-star spot, but we'll get into that. But when it comes to Alonso, we thought 3 to 4 weeks was the initial projection. It was, an injured wrist. We didn't exactly know how bad the bone injury was. And then he comes back, and, his batting average obviously has dropped down, but his leadership is still there. The energy is back in the team. He's still hitting home runs. He's still putting up decent numbers, regardless of, whether he's still injured or not. That remains to be seen, and maybe that'll come out later on if that is something that's still there and he's trying to play through something. We're not entirely sure.
Now, one thing I saw the other day on Facebook, and yeah, I get all my information directly from Facebook. That's not true.
Always trust the internet, folks.
Regarding Francisco Alvarez, many thought he would struggle defensively behind the plate. That has not been the case. So someone posed a question. Has he made that much of an improvement in such a short time period, or are the Mets mismanaging understanding the talent and evaluating the talent they have?
Part of it, I think, is misunderstanding the work ethic. He was someone who, coming into this spring training, they were like, yeah, we care about how he does batting average-wise and home run-wise, but really what we're looking at is defensive skill. And he called for Max Scherzer. he caught for Justin Verlander. He was working with those Cy Young winners to try and build something strong. Last year, he worked with Jacob deGrom, trying to kind of understand more about working with elite pitchers. This year, when Nito and Navarez were both coming back from the IL, there was a lot of discussion. Should Alvarez be DFA'd? Should he be, sent down to the minors? Like, because we have to do something with him because we have 4 catchers on the roster. And all of the Mets pitchers anonymously came out and said, he's a guy who he's the first one in the building. He's the first one watching tape. He's the first one, trying to figure out both batters and pitchers for the other team. He's trying to figure out how batters are going to be attacked. He's trying to figure out how to attack batters on the other team. He's trying to work on his pitchers, their repertoires, how to work that into his game calling. And so I think he's made such a drastic improvement. I want to say that he has been undervalued, but I want to say it's been a drastic improvement just from sheer working with major league talent, working with major league pitching staffs to kind of improve his game. Because they've always mentioned that he's a guy who will ask the pitchers, what can I do better for you? How can I work with you to make this work? And I think that is what truly makes someone a good defensive catcher.
All right, so last thing I'm going to talk about is the other day he hit game-tying home run. He's jogging backwards around the bases, flexing, and I forget if it was the first base or the third base coach came out and said, Young Gun needs to calm it down a little bit. There's certain unwritten rules to this game that he needs to follow. He ends up getting pegged. What is your take on that infectious energy, borderlining being cocky compared to, all right, let's go, let me get my team amped up?
See, I'm so against the unwritten rules of baseball. Because I think it was Joey Cora. I think it was the third base coach who came out and said, Young Gun's got to calm it down. And I'm very against that because we're in the new game of baseball. Mm-hmm. It's a new age now than it has ever been. We're in an age where bat flips are talked about online. People are talking about the celebrations that people are doing. People are doing the gritty coming to home plate. Yep. It's a new age of energy and, building yourself up. And Alvarez has always been that guy. And I'm a big proponent of, if you're at that skill and you're at that level of play and performing the way that he has been, talk your game. You're going to go up there and you're going to go and put on a show. Make it a show. You want to celebrate? Go for it. It hypes up the crowd. People pay to go to those games. You hype up the crowd. You hype up your team. Makes the energy in the building explode. Do it. And if pitchers get their feelings hurt and that's their response, well, that shows what kind of player they are.
How old are you?
22.
22. So this is what I'm going to talk about. The demographic for baseball. When I think baseball, even just a couple of years ago, I'm thinking 60-year-old men, women, glass of whiskey, cigar, watching the game, the love of the structure of the game. Now I'm talking to a 22-year-old who, in our era, mine and yours, I'm going to pair me in. I'm only 34. I'm still hip enough to follow TikTok and all that other good stuff. We have the Savannah Bananas.
Oh, yeah.
Where, for those of you that don't know, it's basically, I would say, the Harlem Globetrotters of baseball, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
So for me, baseball has taken a turn to try to attract the younger generation. And for a lot of people, my friend's son loves the Savannah Bananas. And I feel if he started to watch the game and watch the way that, you gritty towards home plate, maybe the flexing, running backwards a teeny bit.
It's a little bit much.
Distasteful. A little bit too much, but you got to understand the spot that it was. It was a game-tying home run in the middle of a win streak.
2 outs in the ninth.
2 outs in the ninth. And it was a big-time moment. And when it comes to a big-time moment, yeah, walk to walk, talk to talk, whatever. It was a little distasteful, but I'm all for it. And I think that's going to attract the younger generation. The games are moving quicker. There's been more runs scored with the bigger bases. You've seen one of the reasons the Rays got off to such a hot start was they took advantage. Analytics, all right, you're going to throw 2 pitches to first to try to pick me off. All right, that third one, I'm going because you can't throw that third one unless you get me. I'm going. That's what got to the hot start. So I think a lot of this has to be all put together, geared towards the younger generation. I'm here for it.
Oh, absolutely. I will ask you about one rule change, though. Do you think it has helped or hurt the game? So obviously we've been all about speeding the games up. Pitch clock, makes everyone move faster, a lot less downtime, obviously keeps the game more energetic, and keeps it moving a lot more. Helps a lot for the TV audience as well, specifically, instead of the in-stadium. Extra innings, runner on second base. You for or against?
I hate it.
I also hate it.
I hate it.
It's a free run.
Now, I think, and this is going to get a little wacky, a little kooky, if they could figure out a way to make it not seem so wacky. What if we got to a certain point in extra innings where that guy on second does come around? So let's say we get to inning 13. All right, now we start to put the runner on second. Because now we're like, all right, now we're starting to go on game 2, basically. Let's get this over with.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that would be a better rule. It kind of sounds fluky, though. It sounds like, the Harlem Globetrotters of baseball. All right, we're just going to throw a man on second randomly in extra innings. So if they could find a way to make it a little more fluent than me suggesting that, but I hate the man on second. I also hate how ticky-tacky they've been with the play clock.
Oh, it's everything. Whether it's, you have to wait till you make eye contact with the guy, but the guy will wait and look down at the plate till the last possible second and then look up at you. And they will call it every time. Jeff McNeil, when it came to the new shift rules, they called him with his foot over the bag when all the rule was intended was so that the second baseman or shortstop couldn't cross second base. No one cares if your toe's over the bag. But ump's got a call, I guess.
I mean, for me, I would have liked them to see the shift rule change to how we have the new pitchers where you got to come in, throw a certain amount of pitches before we change. Same thing with the shift. All right, we got a 9-inning game. You're allowed, 3 shifts per game. I like the shift because it brings strategy to the game.
Exactly. And this has been my big issue about the rule change of the shift. Baseball is already a game that's 90% put in the hitter's favor. It's 3 outfielders. You have all that ground to cover. The pitchers have every rule stacked against them to make it more difficult for people to make plays. Why can't we have more strategic defense? Why can't there be? I'm actually for banning the sake of putting infielders in the outfield. I don't think you should be able to put your second baseman in right field because you're just getting a 4th outfielder. That is
softball rules.
Oh yeah. And I'm like, some players worked with it. Brandon Nimmo was a player that, when he got into those types of spots where people were just shifting hard against him, he'd bunt to the third base line and just try and get a free single out of it.
Yep.
And some players are able to work off of that. Some players are able to pull the ball to the opposite field when that happens. But I would have rathered it been just a limiting of players at the start of the pitch have to have their feet on the dirt. And that's where I would have left it.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. I think at the very least, you have to be touching the outest part of the dirt. You can shift 3 times per game. So in a big spot, you got the lefty hitter. All right, we're going to move Francisco Lindor just behind second base. We're going to have McNeil back up towards the outfield grass, but still in the infield. Something like that. That's fine.
Oh, yeah.
But that ticky-tacky call that you talked about where, he's trying to hold the runner, and his understanding of the rule was as long as I'm back to my side of the base before the pitch is thrown, that is a legal play. And I think the umps in general are put in such a tight spot because these guys are more athletic. They throw faster. They throw nastier. It's just a harder game to call. And now you got all these new rules in play. So I think ultimately we're going to see it a little bit better next year. This year, they got to throw it hard at you. They got to throw the book at you. Next year is when you're going to see the more leniency. You got to get these players structured into the new game. Next year will be lenient.
Absolutely. And I think that's kind of the big thing right now is people are just so unhappy with, important game moments being decided on a ticky-tacky call or, a runner coming home off of a balk, which you don't really know if it's a balk or not, or someone that's like, oh, I didn't look up at the last second. So, yep, that's a free ball or a free strike either way. And now either it's a strikeout or a batter is now coming home.
Now, obviously, these chances are probably minimal, but let's say you're down 1 run, bottom of the ninth, 2 outs, 3-2 count, bases loaded.
Happened in a spring training game.
What are you going to do? What are you going to do? All right, it's been 25 seconds, not 24. I got ready. I'm in the box. It's a big moment. I wasted my timeout earlier in my batting. This is a big moment. I fouled off a couple pitches. Are you really going to call a strike on that and end the game right there?
So far this season, they've set the precedent that they are calling that strike. They are saying that, yep, you have to pay attention to the pitch clock. Your fault. Strikeout. Game over. And they won't let those big moments play out now. It seems like, at least for this year. I think that you're right in saying that next year they'll probably be a bit more lenient with it. They're going to kind of take notes from this year and how some of those big game moments had been decided by umpiring and umpire decisions, and probably step back from that a little bit. But I do think that is something that is very much going to have to be in the discussion, because there's a lot of outcomes that have been decided so far by simple ticky-tacky calls. And speaking of ticky-tacky calls, what do you think about so far we've had 2 Mets pitchers this year suspended on sticky stuff calls, which the MLB has said is a subjective issue. They've said that it's determined by the umpiring crew what is too sticky, and therefore, even though Max Scherzer, for instance, when he was suspended, washed his hands in front of the umpire, who then went over, felt his hand, said he was too sticky, threw him out of the game, no questions asked, 10-game suspension.
I think anytime you put a rule up to opinion, it's a bad rule, especially like NFL, the catch rule. What is a catch?
Yep.
I've seen catches that should have been catches,
and
I've seen catches that my eyes tell me, hey, he caught it all the way to the ground. The ground can't cause a fumble, but yet it can cause an incomplete pass. That makes no sense to me. But same thing with baseball. Like, I forget what it was. Was it David Cohn that did the live showing of what rubbing alcohol
I think so, yes. Yep.
in rosin does to a ball, where you can literally put the ball on your 2 fingers and hold your fingers and let go of the ball, and it will still stick to your fingers.
Yep.
Anytime you leave it up to opinion, I just think it's a bad rule. I think you need to have certain guidelines.
Yep.
But how do you gauge how sticky is too sticky?
True. I know. It's such a subjective thing. And there's been, like, Phil Cuzzy's umpiring crew has been the one that's been ejecting more people than anyone else. And they're the ones who are just saying, oh, yeah, it's if we can feel it on your hands, then, yeah, we really just don't love it. And I'm like, that's the point, though. The point is to use sweat and rosin to try and make at least some sticky surface on your hand to be able to get more RPM on the ball. And Major League Baseball has come out and stated that they are looking into working on a residue that will be applied to baseballs before each game that should give enough tack to the ball to not need sticky stuff. And then once that's the case, they're working with a chemist group right now to try and create that. And once that happens, they want to outlaw all substances, period.
Rosin and all of it?
Yep, they want to get rid of rosin. They want to just say, yep, there'll be basically a coating applied to the ball. That'll be your sticky surface for the game.
I'm here for it. Any way you could change the game to make it better. Remember the 1 year they tightly wound the baseball, and all of a sudden everybody's hitting home runs.
2019, it was the juice ball era. Everything was a home run. If you made contact, home run. Contact, home run.
Trial and error. So I'm